Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Good Stories Podcast. My name is Jody, here again with Steven, and we get to talk again about some wonderful stories, so it's pretty cool we get to do this, actually. But I do want to say a big thank you to everyone who left us a 5-star rating this week. Feels good. On a few different platforms, so whoever you are out there, thank you for listening and the rating, and for taking the time to do it. We have been brainstorming some more guest interview ideas, and the more positive ratings we have, the more likely people are to say yes to our invitations. So seriously, thank you. It is appreciated. But Stephen pointed out that on this day of recording, today is Bilbo Baggins' birthday.
Yes! How exciting. I get excited about it every year. September 22nd. Here we are.
And Frodo. I mean, is that common knowledge?
It should be.
The Hobbit, all right? Bilbo Baggins. His birthday party is on September 22nd. His birthday, September 22nd.
In some circles, I believe this is referred to as Hobbit Day for exactly that reason.
We should have had, like, cakes or something. I don't know how to celebrate.
I thought about it, but then I ran out of time.
Well, I think we should begin then with some of Bilbo's poetry.
The road goes ever on and on, down from the door where it began. Now far ahead the road has gone, and I must follow if I can, pursuing it with eager feet until it joins some larger way, where many paths and errands meet, and whither then, I cannot say.
He's very good.
I love Tolkien so much. And the poems in The Lord of the Rings have a very dear place in my heart. I don't know, do you remember me reciting them as a young child?
No.
The Troll one. Because I hear tunes in my head to these.
But that's Sam, not Bilbo.
That is Sam, not Bilbo. But I would actually memorize these and sing them at family gatherings. Yes, nerdiness was early in my life.
Well, I used that quote on the front of a scholarship application when I was graduating from high school. You had to pick a quote. I thought, what quote could possibly do that? But it was for going off to college. So I was pretty pleased with myself. Actually.
Yeah, well done indeed. That's a great quote.
Thank you so much. I don't remember if I got the scholarship. I remember the quote.
I'm sure you did.
I'm sure. So today, though, we're actually not talking about Bilbo. We're just celebrating Bilbo. Today, we're stepping back into the wonderful world of George MacDonald's fairy tales with The Light Princess. And I was thinking about this. I don't know that this is the first of his fairy tales I read, but I do know it was the first one that I was floored because it was so very different and very lovely and very layered because he is so creative and I just would never have thought of it. If you haven't read it before, I hope you can get a taste today of just the sheer creativity and magic of this story because who else could possibly combine the physical force of gravity with fairyland and a beautiful baby princess. And it is a fairy tale, but it's also richer than that, I think, like everything George MacDonald wrote. And it is just so clever and altogether profound. So I hope you enjoy it. Time for a story.
Once upon a time, in the kingdom of Lagobel, there lived a king and queen who did not have any children. After pretty much giving up hope, they were delighted at the birth of a baby princess. In their excitement, they forgot to invite her aunt to the christening. Unfortunately, her aunt was a witch, and she held grudges. She came to the christening uninvited, and during the ceremony she cast a horrible spell on the baby, removing her gravity. That's right, the princess now weighed nothing. She was so light she would float in the air like a balloon. Only when swimming could she feel any sense of having weight, and so as a result she loved swimming. During a swim she encounters a wandering prince, and the prince falls in love with her. So long as she is able to swim, she is happy, but when the water in the lake starts to recede, she becomes miserable and desperate. The lake can be saved, but only at the cost of a terrible sacrifice. The prince must decide whether he is willing to do what it takes to save the lake and make the princess happy.
Very good. Do you remember when you first read this one?
I I was going to say, yes, I do, but no, I don't actually. I remember the feeling of reading it, though, because when I saw the title, Light Princess, I was thinking light, sunshine, light beams. And I thought this was going to be, I don't know, some Jedi princess or something. But no, she just weighs nothing, no gravity. This is, I think, George MacDonald at his most just silly, just tongue-in-cheek, kind of absurd. He's funny in this in a way. I mean, he's funny in a lot of his stuff, but this one, the whole thing is just delightful in that way.
There are puns and witticisms.
Yes, there are.
So this one came out in 1864. You will be happy to know that my version has many footnotes. Way more than I would have thought for a very short fairy tale.
Excellent. Mine didn't have any footnotes.
I will share them with you. I didn't tell you ahead because I knew you'd like to get it in the moment.
I'm very excited.
But George MacDonald, just real quick, because we have talked about him before, and we will again, because he wrote a lot. But who was he?
Great Scottish author of the 19th century, died in 1905 and wrote voluminously in many styles and lots of books, lots of stories, and lots of sermons. He was a pastor. He was an author. He was a guy who made friends with some of the society and other authors of the time. And probably most importantly to me, he was C.S. Lewis's literary master. He was the man that C.S. Lewis gave the credit for baptizing his imagination, and through which he really saw the light of holiness and the light of God before he ever became a Christian. So wonderful man, wonderful author, and really excited to be talking about another one of his stories today.
You will be happy to know I found trivia about him that said when he was 13 years old, he would climb up on top of tables and tell stories and give sermons to whoever would listen, typically like farm staff, like farm hands. So it might be a sweet fairy tale, or it might be a sermon, or I feel like he can do both together.
He does.
Amazingly.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how, but he does, and it's great. I don't know about a spoiler alert for this one, because it's a fairy tale. I mean, they kind of have all the same ending. I feel like the biggest spoiler is the fact that light means no gravity as opposed to daylight.
Yeah, and we discover that in one of the first few chapters. So that's not an end to the book kind of thing.
It did remind me that when we talked about At the Back of the North Wind, there's a little fairy tale tucked in there, also by George MacDonald, called Little Daylight. It's amazing how many different twists on just a simple fairy tale the man took. Because that one, Little Daylight, is all about the daylight and the actual literal light. This one's gravity. Lack of.
Or the lack thereof.
Yeah. Yes. Here's a quote, and I'm not sure who said it about him. It's just an assessment of how he writes, that George MacDonald, saw fairy tales as, quote, a way to say things too deep for plain speech. And in this one, I like that it's not too sermonizing. Actually, it is just a very fun, sweet story. But he's really good at it because there are these opposites between, well, good and evil, right and wrong, and like laughter versus happiness. You know, these kind of juxtapositions of things. So keep an eye out for those because they're kind of throughout the whole thing.
Yeah. I love the story. I love the interactions between the characters in this one. We're going to get to interactions between the king and the queen. This is one of the best just offhand snippets of married life and a married relationship. I love when we get to the philosophers. It's just fantastic. So yeah, I'm excited to talk about it.
Yeah, I will say Queen Victoria loved this one, and reportedly she read it to her children. And Mr. C.S. Lewis, I believe, kept this specific one, The Light Princess, specifically on a shelf with other great fairy tales because these were important. These were important. So let's get into it. The first chapter is called, What? No children?
And I don't know why, but I view George MacDonald, I think of him as a fairly stern guy. I think it's because of pictures of him I've seen on the front of books. He looks like he would be intimidating, and I think there's something about just being Scotch that comes across as fairly intimidating. But it's humorous in here, this idea of what, no children? And this is where the king and the queen start interacting with each other. It's discovered they have no children, and They just bicker about it.
It is funny. I think it's the beard. It just makes him look cranky and all the pictures. Even if he was smiling, you couldn't see it behind the beard. So.
Oh, yeah.
But the man had 11 children. And clearly he told children's stories regularly.
The king is very much pitying himself in this first chapter. And the king said to himself, all the queens of my acquaintance have children, some 3, some 7, and some as many as 12. And my queen has not one. I feel ill-used.
That takes me to my first footnote.
Yes!
So the use of numbers, the king's choice of these traditional numbers suggests that he is better acquainted with standard fairy tale conventions than with the production of actual babies. Although, again, George MacDonald had 11, so 12's not out of the realm of possibility.
No, not out of the realm of possibility. His wife in this, the queen, seems to have a very good sense of humor and almost kind of has to because of her husband, because he's always cranky, sort of internally cranky. And I like that she just takes this all as a joke, and a very good one, too.
She's more patient, a little calmer than him. At one point in here, it calls him the good old tyrant. He's not actually ill-tempered. He's just curmudgeonly.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, he's mocking his wife for not having babies. Like, what's wrong with you?
Yeah, right.
And she's like, well, if I could right now, I would give you one. But
why don't you have any daughters, at least? The king asks.
And it says at the end, the king tried to have patience, but he succeeded very badly. It was more than he deserved, therefore, when at last the queen gave him a daughter, as lovely a little princess as ever cried. So at the beginning, she's a baby girl who cries. A beautiful one.
What a wonderful start. Lovely princess. They finally have a child. And then we move into the next chapter. And all the chapter titles I find funny. The next one, Won't I Just?
So the day drew near when the infant must be christened. I do think I will read more of this one because it's just great. It's better to just read it than to actually summarize it. But it goes through this discourse about how typically you have some poor relatives who you don't remember, especially if you're a king. But sometimes it matters. But it says, why don't poor relations do anything to keep you in mind of them? So the king could not see into the garret she lived in, could he? It's talking about his sister. He has a sister, Princess Macamnoit, which, again, I have a footnote.
I'm assuming there's a footnote on this one. There would need to be. There isn't in mine. So I pronounced this for a while in my head, Macamnoit, because I was thinking the French, the N-O-I-T, Macamnoit. And then I realized, no, when you really... Well, I'll let you read the footnotes. Probably going to say it.
Well, that's it. It's... It throws back to the phrase in Scotch that says, make 'em know it.
Yeah, which when you sound it out, if you actually do it, you can get Macamnoit.
There is some speculation that he included it as a Mac for his surname, George MacDonald. But she's the bad guy, so I don't know about that. Princess Macamnoit is the one saying, won't I just? She is forgotten from the christening party. And I'm going to read this about her. It says, she was a sour, spiteful creature. The wrinkles of contempt crossed the wrinkles of peevishness and made her face as full of wrinkles as a pat of butter. If ever a king could be justified in forgetting anybody, this king was justified in forgetting his sister, even at a christening. She looked very odd, too. Her forehead was as large as all the rest of her face and projected over it like a precipice. When she was angry, her little eyes flashed blue. When she hated anybody, they shone yellow and green. What they looked like when she loved anybody, I do not know, for I never heard of her loving anybody but herself.
She's very clever, very smart, and turns out she is a bit of well, she's a witch. She has fairy skills, but she has nothing but contempt for the witches and fairies and stories that curse children. They're so boring. They're so predictable. She's going to come up with something good. Something different. And so she goes to the christening.
She puts on her best gown. When she gets there, the king doesn't even remember that he forgot her. So he welcomes her in. That's how forgetful of her he is.
She remembers, though. And I suppose, should we explain what a christening is? A christening is a baptism. So this is an infant baptism where they're going to baptize the baby and give it its name, its Christian name. So this is the entrance into the Christian community and the granting of the Christian name. So this is the christening that's occurring for this royal child.
Yeah, so for a christening, you need water, holy water. And it says that the witch gets close and she throws something into the water. It says she maintained a very respectful demeanor until the water was applied to the child's face. But at that moment, she turned around in her place 3 times and muttered the following words, loud enough for those beside her to hear. Light of spirit by my charms, light of body every part, never weary human arms, only crush thy parents' heart.
Everyone thinks she's just crazy. What is she saying?
What?
She's rattling off. It says at the end of this chapter, though, the mischief was done.
And the nurse notices suddenly the baby doesn't weigh anything. But she doesn't say anything right then.
Which takes us into the next chapter. She can't be ours.
Her atrocious aunt had deprived the child of all her gravity. And there's some discussion about how she did it, the science behind it. And he's like, that's not so important. What's important is what comes of it.
Yeah, right. The science will come back, though, later.
It's true. I like that he actually puts that in there, like some discussion of how this in reality could have taken place. Clearly, this is fairyland.
And this poor baby, well, the baby doesn't seem to be any the worse for this, other than she just floats around. She can't stay down. She won't go down unless she's been propelled downwards. She just floats around like a buoyant balloon everywhere.
Yeah, I do think there is a bunch of stuff in this story from other things that George MacDonald wrote. Like we said, he wrote a lot of things. So I pulled a quote kind of around something suddenly happening in a family, something going sideways. I believe it's from Thomas Wingfold Curate, a different book. But it says, sometimes a thunderbolt, as men call it, will shoot from a clear sky. And sometimes into the midst of a peaceful family, or a yet quieter individuality, without warning of gathered storm above, or slightest tremble of earthquake beneath, will fall a terrible fact. And from the moment, everything is changed. That family or that life is no more what it was. Probably never more can be what it was. Better it ought to be, worse it may be, which depends upon itself. But its spiritual weather is altered. The air is thick with cloud and cannot weep itself clear. There may come a gorgeous sunset, though. To me, this is very George MacDonald.
Yes.
There's this thunderbolt. It's all gone sideways. It's not what they wanted it to be. There may come a gorgeous sunset, though.
The king and the queen, this is where some of those interactions start coming up, where the king is complaining and wondering whose fault is this? You know, she can't be ours. I love this line, though. Now, the queen was much cleverer than the king and had begun already to suspect that this effect defective came by cause. So she knows that something happened with here. And again, she is smarter throughout all this than the king. The king is more of a bluster. And there's some very practical problems with having a baby that'll float. For example, if it floats up to the ceiling, how do you get the baby down? Well, they had to get the stool, which the king uses to get onto his throne in order to bring the baby down. And this, I think, speaks something to the king, because I love this line too. For he was a little king with a great throne, like many other kings. The idea of a little king has so many layers to that.
Well, this baby is floating up by the ceiling, and she's just laughing. Whole time. She's laughing, cracking up. That's just what she does. She laughs and laughs and laughs. But they can't reach her even with the stool. So she has to get retrieved with the tongs. They tong down their floating baby.
That's right. See, practical problems.
But the queen points out that people who were never invited ought not to have been present. She has an inkling. Oh, this was your sister.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't actually invite her. She shouldn't have been there. Something went wrong, very wrong. And then there's other problems. Next chapter is called, Where is she? There's a tricky crosswind. Turns out they open a window and don't notice that she flies out of it.
Well, the problem was the second window.
Right.
One window, that's no big deal. But when the second window got opened, yeah, it says a frolicsome fairy wind came and took her away. And it's so sweet because they do end up finding her asleep under a rose bush. the fairy wind was gentle and put her in that place. I really love that the servants just think this is the greatest thing ever. They keep playing ball with her. And when you think of royal servants playing ball with a royal child, you don't assume that the child is going to be the ball. But in this case, she is. And they keep throwing her back and forth to each
And
other,
she loves it.
laughing the whole time.
It does say that the servants love the ball itself better than the game. But she is always laughing. She has literally no gravity, but there's also no gravity in her personality. She's constantly laughing, even as a brand new baby. But there are endless odd incidences. He does not go into all of them, but does say that there were a few. One includes a chimney.
It's fun to think about what would happen. And it's not like the baby is scared during any of this. As you said, she's laughing, laughing, laughing. She never stops laughing, which probably has something to do with her lightness, her lack of gravity.
It does say below stairs, they're just delighted all the time. But above stairs, they're unhappy. And as she gets older, she plays tricks on them. She'll float above their head while they're talking, but she cannot control her laughter. And so eventually they find her out. But this is so great, these references to other fairy tales and rhymes, because the king is in his counting house, counting all his money. And the queen is in the parlor trying to eat her bread and honey, but she can't. She's crying.
I'm confessing right now, I didn't catch that at all.
Are you serious?
That is brilliant. I thought, yeah, king counting money, she's eating, okay. The rhyme never occurred to. Oh, that's great.
There's a lot of them in here. These little nods to other fairy tales and rhymes. It's wonderful. And children would get it immediately.
It's even better than I thought. Well done, George MacDonald.
Well done, George MacDonald. But the queen is crying and the king is upset to be interrupted counting his shekels. So he goes and looking for a fight.
Well, and he's depressed as he's counting his money because he realizes that every one of those pieces of money weighs more than his daughter does. And that gets him down as he's counting.
The conversation here between the cranky king and queen is funny, though, because she says, I can't eat my honey. And he's like, well, you've just eaten your breakfast, 2 turkey eggs and 3 anchovies. Why is he watching what she's eating?
I don't know.
She says, that's not it at all. It's my child, my child. You know, they are so upset. And even her laugh, something's kind of wrong about it. She's not happy, but she's not unhappy. It's this empty, constant laughter.
Yeah, and they're trying to sort out is this a good or a bad thing? I mean, it seems a little of both, maybe.
Yeah, so they go back and forth. Do you want to be the king?
I will be the king. Yet the king could not help a sigh, which he tried to turn into a cough, saying, It is a good thing to be light-hearted, I am sure, whether she be ours or not.
I like that he still won't own her. Somebody's baby. It is a bad thing to be light-headed, answered the queen, looking with prophetic soul far into the future.
'Tis a good thing to be light-handed.
'Tis a bad thing to be light-fingered, answered the queen.
'Tis a good thing to be light-footed, said the king.
'Tis a bad thing, began the queen.
But the king interrupted her. In fact, said he, with the tone of one who concludes an argument in which he has had only imaginary opponents, and in which, therefore, he has come off triumphant. In fact, it is a good thing altogether to be light-bodied.
But it is a bad thing altogether to be light-minded, retorted the queen. So they're taking these different definitions and phrases for being light-minded, light-handed, light-footed, light-bodied, and applying them back and forth to their daughter.
And there's one other that gets thrown, or the queen, to the king as kind of a gotcha one.
And it's a bad thing to be light-haired. The king and his daughter are both light-haired, where the queen is clearly dark-haired.
It's fairly clear that the king was light-haired. He is now light in the sense of not having much hair, even though it was light-haired to begin with. And the wordplay and pun that comes off of this is just wonderful, because he's thinking about this as he's walking away, and he heard light-haired, but wondered if she meant light-aired, as in his air is light. And I enjoy the thought process behind it, and it goes to the way kind of Great Britain people care about pronunciation. I remember a story from G.K. Chesterton's childhood where he was saying that he was so angry as like a 6-year-old, really young, that he threatened his parents where if he didn't give them what he wanted, he was going to, instead of saying hat, I'll say at. And apparently the dropping of the H is such a Cockney lowbrow thing that he thought that was just devastating. And the Queen is wondering, or the King is wondering if that's what the Queen is doing here, where she's adding an H, but really meant to drop it. And it's just so complex and delightful and fun, but he's pretty certain he's been insulted. And given that the Queen is clever, I'm pretty certain that he has been.
Oh, yeah. And she said, it ends with, for why might she not aspirate her vowels when she was aspirated herself? It takes the H out. It's very clever. There is a footnote that I will read. Honestly, it goes back to My Fair Lady. To the dropping of H's, where he makes her ha, ha, ha into the megaphone thing. It's a thing in terms of where you're from in Britain, I guess. But yeah, aspirating the H is saying the h or not. In Italian, that's a thing as well, the pronunciation of the H or not. But this is about the puns, that it says that the printed version of the story is not nearly so bad about the punning as it originally was. He took some out.
Really?
Because there's a lot in here. Anyway, they go on from there because the Queen, well, they're both upset. And at some point, it becomes earnest. And the King asks her if she can bear this. And she says, no, I can't. And that's the question. What's to be done? And the Queen suggests an apology to his sister for forgetting her.
Yeah, easily done. Go apologize to your sister. The amazing thing is the King does. He tries. It doesn't go well. As I said, the princess, the witch, she holds grudges.
So he comes home disconsolate, which is a great word. I've not heard disconsolate in a while. It means he's upset, not consoled. And the Queen tries to comfort him, and they say, you know what? We will wait till she's older. Then she can tell us stuff. Because here she's still a baby. She's still a little girl. And they kind of pipe dream what that would look like. Like, what if she has children?
We're going to have floating babies. So many floating grandchildren in the air. It's alarming.
It says that he thought about consulting the doctors, but he was afraid that they'd experiment on her, so he let that go.
See, he loves her. He's curmudgeonly, but he's not willing to give her over to the doctors.
That's
so,
good.
Yeah.
The good old tyrant.
Well, time passes, and our little baby laughing princess turns 17. But she still laughs too much, which is the name of the next chapter.
And it says she's constantly laughing, but she never smiles. Never smiles, but constantly laughing. She also never cries. And she's very light-hearted about everything. Like when her mother cries, she's like, oh, Mom's squeezing water out of her ice or some random thing. She doesn't understand, and it's all so funny. It's all a big game. It's all a big joke. But she's not happy. She's not smiling even.
Yeah. She does learn some very practical ways of locomotion and moving around. She's had to. Apparently, if she holds stones in her hands, the weight will bring her to the ground. So she's able to sort of walk or run after a fashion by holding on these stones. It's very clear, though, that anything that becomes clothing, that doesn't work anymore, including things like jewelry. So she could drape herself in golden necklaces, and they would become as light as she is. This is always kind of a fun mental game with, I'm thinking of Thor and his hammer in the Marvel movies, right? So Thor's the only one that can pick up this hammer, but if he gets in an elevator, the elevator goes up. So what's the deal? Similar here with this, where again, if she's carrying something, that can weight her down, but if she's wearing it, if it's a part of her ensemble, her clothes, then it just becomes part of her weightlessness.
I picture her with rocks in her hands to weight her down, kind of like this bounding butterfly. Because then probably she wouldn't pick up really heavy ones, but enough to eventually like land her gently back to earth. It'd be such an interesting problem to have.
Well, it runs into some interesting problems. There's a wonderful story here with the princess, the toad, and the page. This is great. So her king, Papa, comes out, and she decides she's going to run to him after her fashion and give him a kiss. But unfortunately, there's no rocks around, so instead she grabs this big old ugly toad, and that's what's weighting her down as she jumps. Well, her aim isn't great. The toad's weight isn't really ideal like the stones would be, so instead of landing in her father's arms, she lands in a young page's arms. Well, she was planning to kiss somebody, so she goes ahead and kisses him anyway, and that doesn't go over well with Dad. So Dad comes by, and she ends up pushing the toad at him, so he gets a wet toad in his face. She's kissed the page. It made me laugh.
Everyone's uncomfortable. And it describes how sometimes when she's coming down, the rocks aren't as heavy as she thought, so her feet like run in midair like a crazy chicken. This would be a really fun movie, actually.
See, now I'm thinking Super Mario 2.
Oh,
when
yeah.
Luigi, when he jumps really high and his legs just do.
After that would happen, though, she wouldn't be upset. She would laugh like the very spirit of fun. Only in her laugh, there was something missing. What it was, I find myself unable to describe. I think it was a certain tone, depending upon the possibility of sorrow. He uses an Italian word, morbidezza.
Mm-hmm.
Morbidezza, perhaps, like morbidity.
I actually looked that one up because I didn't know what that one means. It's used often in music and literature. It's actually delicateness or softness. So this complexity to it.
My footnote says, used by Italian painters for representation of softness or delicacy with morbidity, a term for sickliness or gloominess.
Mm.
So it ends with, though, she never smiled. And this next one is called Try Metaphysics.
I love this so much. This may be my favorite chapter, unsurprising. Can we talk about metaphysics?
You may.
Metaphysics. It is an entire branch of philosophy based on the concept discussion of first things, fundamental basic things. Things like essence, being, reality, space. So the big questions. And this is fun because a lot of people don't know where that word comes from. Meta in Greek, depending on the form of the word, is either kind of by or after or beyond, right? After. And then physics is essentially nature, right? What is. So the modern meaning of this, most people would describe as things that are kind of beyond nature. Again, things like essence, being, reality, those kinds of questions. That's not actually where the word comes from. It comes from Aristotle by means of a man named Andronicus. Aristotle, of course, was the great Greek philosopher that wrote multiple books that were all brilliant, including a book on just plain physics. We have most of what we know about Aristotle through the copies that a guy named Andronicus collected and organized. And after the book Physics, he placed this other work of Aristotle that talks about these concepts that he then labeled metaphysics, because it came after physics. So it actually has nothing to do with the subject matter. It has to do with the way it was arranged originally in this book. But it is such a good name for what it is anyway that now we tend to use it in that other meaning as opposed to the way Andronicus originally meant it. So an aside on metaphysics. I'm done now.
It's very logical. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Well, before we start with the metaphysics, the king and queen try to make... She doesn't have a name.
No.
Whoa.
Not that I know of. I didn't catch a name through any of this. She's always just the princess.
I just realized she does not have a name. She was not given a name at her christening.
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry. That threw me a little bit.
See, we're both discovering things here.
It's exciting.
It's great.
So the king and queen, this girl's 17 now. You know, she's getting older. They try to make her sit in a chair, which is hilarious. She kind of tries to comply and be very serious, but she can't last very long. She's always just laughing and floating off. And they try to have an adult conversation with her. And they ask her what she thinks about. And she says that she has the curious feeling that she's the only one in the whole world who has any sense. And the king's like, don't you want anything? Don't you have a wish? And she's like, you promise you'll give it to me? He's going to say yes.
Yeah, because we have come across the rash boon over and over. And if you've read any fairy tales, don't do that. Don't say yes without knowing what it is.
The queen stops him.
Fortunately, the queen is much more clever than the king, and she stops him.
Don't do that. Don't do that. So the queen makes him wait, but like, hey, what do you want? And this girl, the 17-year-old girl, she's getting older. Her greatest wish, her only wish, is to be flown like a kite. And she just thinks it's hilarious.
The higher, the better.
And the king and queen are worried. And this is where they say, okay, time to get serious. Call in the metaphysicians to cure her infirmity. And the queen lets that pun go, her infirmity. The names of the metaphysicians are wonderful, though. So there's Humdrum, who is a materialist, and Copykeck, the spiritualist.
And I love this on so many levels. One is that this small king with a great throne happens to have two Chinese philosophers in his court. Why? Why would he have them there? But he does.
One is Chinese and one is Tibetan.
Thank you. The other thing that I really enjoy is that my last name is, of course, Keck. So Copykeck. It's my name.
And they spelled it right.
It's another pun, right? I'm in it. I am a pun in this story.
And they're hilarious together. Like the king and queen are hilarious talking together. These two metaphysicians are hilarious. It says that Copykeck, the spiritualist, he always talks first, but Humdrum always talks last. And they cut each other off. It's hilarious.
Well, they totally disagree. They have very different philosophies of the world.
It's true. And I'm going to read Copykeck, the spiritualist's solution to what ails this little girl. She must be taught by the sternest compulsion to take an interest in the earth as the earth. This surprised me that the spiritualist wants her to observe the earth. But
well, remember the reasoning behind it. I mean, it's a long quote, so we won't read the whole thing. But his whole argument is that she has no connection with the earth. This is a very spiritual thing. That her nature, her very essence is separate from our planet. She actually belongs on Mercury, but that didn't happen. And so the only way to bind her nature to our earth is for her to learn about it. And so this is a very spiritual approach. And actually, if you get into the metaphysics of why he believes she can't come down, it makes sense.
Well, because she is mercurial, he does point that out. Like, she's under the influence of another planet, probably Mercury. So Mercury, I can't even say it. Mercury is associated with the light-footed Greek god, as well as with Quicksilver. Very fitting for our light princess. And then Humdrum chimes in with a hold.
He just cannot stand this anymore.
Stop talking.
That's nonsense.
His solution, and he goes, they both deliberate and give many evidences as to why their solutions is the best. But Humdrum's solution for this beautiful laughing girl is a phlebotomy.
Yeah, obviously her blood is running the wrong way. That's the issue. We have to fix that.
It's bad. Phlebotomize until she is reduced to the last point of safety. Let it be effected, if necessary, in a warm bath. I mean, it's really bad. And then they're going to stretch her out opposite ways.
And then there are pumps that have to be applied to different areas to get the blood to recirculate. So exhibit a pint of French brandy and await the result is the way he ends it. And Copykeck, who was interrupted, which would presently arrive in the form of a grim death. So he does not think that this will work.
Humdrum says, if it should result in her death, she would yet die in doing our duty. It's very pretentious.
Well, the next line. His writing is so good here. But their majesties had too much tenderness for their volatile offspring. I love that she's described as volatile.
It says she was the fifth imponderable body, sharing all the other properties of the ponderable. A really wonderful summation of metaphysics in a short chapter.
Yeah, well done. We got the spiritualist. We got the materialist. We've got theories, how those can practically be applied. And both would kill her.
The next chapter says, perhaps the best thing for the princess would have been to fall in love. But how a princess who had no gravity could fall into anything is a difficulty. Perhaps the difficulty. She can't fall, literally or metaphorically, into anything. It's a problem.
But a happy accident occurs here in this chapter. She can't fall. Everyone knows she can't fall, but they go out on the lake. And there are different boats on the lake. The king is on one boat. There are other boats around. And she needs to get to another boat. And the king is in good humor. And so he decides, you know what, I'm just going to throw her. Because, again, she can't fall. So he takes the princess and throws her to the other boat. But when he throws her, his trajectory is off. And he ends up throwing her down, because she'll go whatever way she's thrown. She hits the water and she sinks. Freaks out everyone. They've never seen her go down of her own volition. And so all these, maids and men are jumping into the water to try and rescue her and save her. But she loves it because when she's in the water, she has some weight. She can swim the way any of us could swim. It's the first time she's had that movement the same way other people do. She has some gravity by being in the water.
There's speculation that it's because of it's how she was cursed by the water in the font, but he moves on from that quickly. Just a quick suggestion.
The other thing, though, that she loves about it is that she actually has some freedom there and some lack of ceremony. I mean, can you imagine having a royal child with an issue like this? She would be surrounded at all times.
Oh, she's tethered. They hold on to her with these tethers where noblemen walk her around everywhere.
Bad enough being royalty on its own, but to have all these additional things, she's always surrounded by this. But in the water, she can just be there. She can have some freedom. She can have some time to her own, and it's great. We're not done with the metaphysicians. I love them because they see this and they say, aha, she has an affinity now with the water. Well, if that works, let's bury her in earth for 3 years, and then she will gain affinity for the earth and will be cured. Again, the king didn't have the heart to do it.
And no, we're not going to do that. But here's where she actually wants a little bit of something because her room looks out over the lake. Lagobel, the name of the land, means beautiful lake. It says it's the loveliest lake in the world. And she thinks, if only I had my gravity, she could jump in the lake on her own, from her own balcony. She could do that. As it is, she needs someone to put her in to the lake. She has to have assistance even to do that. But once she's there, she's so happy. It's actually really wonderful. It says she's calmer there, more sedate. She's much lovelier in character whenever she's in the water. But because they will not bury her in the earth for 3 years.
Well, they're not educated.
The metaphysicians agree that, okay, fine, make her cry.
It seems a jump, but they're all in agreement on it that this will work. If they could by any means be made to cry, she might recover her lost gravity. But that's the problem. How do you do it to this laughing young lady who just will not take anything seriously? How do you make her cry? They try a few different things. None of them work. They cannot make her cry.
They send this tragic beggar and he has this artistry of presenting his story so woefully, and she just laughs. Again, she doesn't smile. There's no humor in it. She just laughs, and she can't stop laughing. The king even beats her. He runs up and beats her. It says her laughing sounded a little more like screaming. Still no crying. It says to make the princess cry was as impossible as to make her weigh. Because she doesn't weigh anything. She cannot cry. She has no gravity. The next chapter is called Put Me In Again.
Enter the prince. It's a fairy tale. There has to be a prince. The prince is from a faraway land, and
1,000 miles.
Oh, yeah.
1,000 miles. That's a long way to go, even in fairyland. And he's in search of a daughter of a queen.
That's right. He is not searching for this princess. He's heard of this princess. And that just seems like too much work. That's just not normal. And so that's not who he's looking for. But the problem is he can't find a princess up to his standards.
Well, he's worried that if she's willing to lose her gravity, there's no telling what she'd lose next.
Yeah, right.
Maybe her visibility. I think her tangibility.
Yeah, what could go? Yeah, but even any of the other princesses he comes across, none of them are what he's looking for. It's just not what he wants. And of course, he ends up out in the woods one day with his courtiers. And this is just such a great line. One day he lost sight of his retinue in a great forest. These forests are very useful in delivering princes from their courtiers, like a sieve that keeps back the bran.
I like the rest too because it gives you this feeling of other tales. So then the princes get away to follow their fortunes. In this, they have the advantage of the princesses who are forced to marry before they have had even a bit of fun. I wish our princesses got lost in a forest sometimes.
Well, one lovely evening, this prince, now escaped from his courtiers, sees this most beautiful lake in the world. And again, he's not looking for it, but he sees somebody in the lake. Clearly, she needs rescuing. And so he jumps in after her and he saves this individual from drowning, who it turns out wasn't drowning at all.
But the laughter sounds weird, so he thinks there's a problem. He's trying to help, but he accidentally throws her out of the water because he's trying to bring her up out of the water, not knowing she has no weight, and instead throws her up, and she just yells at him, "You naughty, naughty man!" Says she catches a tree like a pine cone in succession to climb down. He does not understand what's happening here. And the princess yells at him and says, "You don't have any brains, and that's a worse loss than gravity." You're stupid.
Fair. Yeah, I could see that. But kind of the great thing here, he has made her mad. Nobody else has ever done that. It says no one had ever succeeded in putting her into a passion before. So she's not happy with him, quite the opposite, but he has succeeded in some ways of rousing her passions and making her angry.
And she says, "Put me up immediately." And he asks, "Up where?" He's very willing, but up where? And she's like, "In the water." Like, for her, it's reversed, this idea of up and down.
In the water, you stupid. She's not done insulting him for his lack of brains.
He threw her.
The paragraph before that, though, it says that the prince doesn't have a chance. It says he had fallen in love with her almost already, for her anger made her more charming than anyone else had ever beheld her. And as far as he could see, which certainly was not far, she had not a single fault about her, except, of course, that she had not any gravity.
No prince, however, would judge of a princess by weight.
That would be rude.
This part's funny. The loveliness of her foot he would hardly estimate by the depth of the impression it could make in the mud. That is a reference to Cinderella, brother. He just does these nods, to other fairy tales. I love them.
This next part is great because she keeps yelling at him to put her back in. And he says, "How am I supposed to do that?" And she says, "Well, that's your problem, right? Find a way."
You took me out, put me in again.
He finds a way. He grabs her and jumps in, and they fall into the lake together. She has never fallen before. She's never had that experience. The prince is certainly falling for her in his own way, and now she gets to experience falling into the lake with the prince.
And he asks her, "How did you like falling in?" And she's like, "Is that what you call it?" She has no idea even what it's referencing. And she does really like it. And she says she wants to fall in again. And she almost looks sad, it says. She says, "To think I'm the only person in my father's kingdom who can't fall." So she's having some idea here that, she might be missing out on something.
Yeah, it says, "It is the most delightful fun I ever had in my life," answered she. "I never fell before. I wish I could learn to think I'm the only person in my father's kingdom that can't fall."
And there's a little bit of punning here. It says she ignores it. She has her father's aversion to punning. But they riff on this different meanings of the word falling.
Well, she decides she has to go home, and this is kind of great because with the prince there, she can sort of dupe her followers. He can push her up into the balcony, and then they'll be looking for her all night, and she just thinks that's fun. So she can sneak back into her room on her own, and she does with the help of the prince. The prince goes and finds a cave to sleep in and dreams about swimming with the princess.
It does say that he doesn't want to play that game. He will help her up in her balcony with more obedience than pleasure. He says gallantly, because I don't think he's as light as her. He sees the problem because her people are out looking for her all night. She thinks that'll be so much fun. So funny. He's like, "Okay, but I don't want to." But he does fall in love with her. And it's again, this kind of double double meanings of the same word, falling. She can't fall. He has fallen, even though she is quite imperfect with her lack of gravity. But he asks her if she'll be in the lake tomorrow night, and I'm curious what you think of this. She answers, "To be sure I will. I don't think so. Perhaps." It says it's a confusing response.
I don't know that I've got a good answer for it. Again, it is a confusing response, but I think this is a confusing thing for her. I think she's trying to decide how she's going to react to this. I mean, I think any young lovers kind of have this concept of not really knowing up from down or what they're going to say. And again, to her, who has been so separate from any concept of love, given her lack of weight, I think she's got to be confused and doesn't really know. So I wonder if there's just a little bit of a ramble with that. Is there a footnote that would help clarify this?
There's not on that one.
Come on, footnotes.
The next chapter is called Look at the Moon. And so the prince is just waiting for her. He has to wait till evening because she has people around all day while she's in the lake. But then he sings for her. He sings her to him. It's very sweet.
He's a poet.
It says, before he had finished his song, the princess was just under the place where he sat and looking up to find him. And he asked her, "Would you like a fall, princess?"
There you are. Yes, if you please, prince. So she is ready to fall again. And they do. And they have fun. They just enjoy their time in the water. The prince is loving it. She's loving it. The moon comes out on one of these nights and just bathes everything and is glorious. He loves her. It's obvious. But it becomes apparent that she doesn't really even seem able to love him. She's having fun. She's enjoying herself. But it's not the same feelings towards him that he's having towards her.
He notices at the end how different her character is when she's in and out of the water. And he comes to the conclusion, well, when we get married, we will turn merman and mermaid and go out to sea at once.
That's right.
Nothing else to be done. I do love the descriptions of the moon, how they'll dive down deep and then look up at the moon. It's a good perspective difference and very pretty. But one of these nights when they're swimming, the princess, she doesn't say anything to the prince, but she swims to the edge of the lake. And she's upset. Says she notices that the lake is lower. And she swims off with no comment at all. Says she's very upset, but she never cried.
And this brings us into the next chapter, which obviously is going to make me uncomfortable because it's titled Hiss. Means there's going to be snakes involved. And, devotees of the show will know that I don't care for snakes.
Only one snake. So this takes us back to the wicked princess, the wicked witch, Mekamnoit. She is back. She is bitter because she learns that the princess gets so much joy out of this lake.
But, said she, I will soon set all right. The king and the people shall die of thirst. Their brains shall boil and frizzle in their skulls before I will lose my revenge.
It's pretty bad.
She's mean.
Wow.
Very mean.
Says that she tosses this dried piece of seaweed into this water with chants and wicked witch things. And then she's knitting and chanting and murmuring to herself. And she's polishing 100 keys. And as she does so, this snake comes out of this cauldron behind her. Clearly the seaweed has turned into it. And it says that it is one of the white snakes of darkness.
I looked this up. I think this is a Chinese folktale. But that is as much looking up as I did because there were going to be lots of pictures of snakes. So I stopped. So go on.
I found the Chinese one. And it's possible because we did have a Chinese physician. But there's also a tale by the Brothers Grimm called The White Snake. And most of it is not about the snake, but I think it actually fits a little bit better. I'm going to read the first couple paragraphs. A long time ago, so here's a sub-story in our story. I love doing that. A long time ago, there lived a king who was famed for his wisdom through all the land. Nothing was hidden from him, and it seemed as if news of the most secret things was brought to him through the air. But he had a strange custom. Every day after dinner, when the table was cleared and no one else was present, a trusty servant had to bring him one more dish. It was always covered, however, and even the servant didn't know what was in it. Neither did anyone know, for the king never took off the cover to eat of it until he was quite alone. It says it goes on for a long time, but the servant is so interested that he hides it away, and he has to look one of the times. He lifts up the cover, and he saw a white snake lying on the dish. But when he saw it, he could not deny himself the pleasure of tasting it, so he cut off a little bit and put it into his mouth. No sooner had it touched his tongue than he heard a strange whispering of little voices outside his window. He went and listened, and then noticed that it was the sparrows who were chattering together and telling one another of all kinds of things which they had seen in the fields and woods. Eating the snake had given him power of understanding the language of animals.
Interesting. We have seen that trope before, most common in Nordic literature with the salmon of wisdom. In Nordic and Celtic literature, where somebody consumes the salmon of wisdom and then can understand the speech of birds and stuff. The reason I was going with the Chinese one is because of the idea of the shape-shifting and the kind of the formation of the snake that occurs in some of those tales. But who knows? Maybe it's both.
He was pretty well read. It could be both. Or things I haven't even heard of, but this white snake comes out and she twists it around her.
And that's something in the Chinese tales, because the woman would wrap the snake around her and then somehow through that she would transform into a serpent. Again, I didn't look into this in depth because there would have been pictures, and I don't do that. But
I was thinking the Grimm one more from the idea of wisdom, like the witch clearly has wisdom of things and of this lake that other people do not have. But she is plotting vengeance here, and it demonstrates it really well because she pulls out these 100 keys and she goes through these 100 doors with this snake twined around her, and she's savoring it. And she says, "This is worth living for," which is interesting because what she's taken from the princess is kind of that life and savor. But here she savors this twisted thing where she's going to wreak vengeance, They go through 100 doors and she unlocks it and relocks it on her way back out. So there's 100 doors between where she lives and they go under the lake, the subterranean cavern. And there's this great description of how she circles around and the snake spirals with her as she unwinds it. And at some point it shoots out and sinks its fangs into the roof above it. And it starts to drain the lake. But it's not fast enough. So she's got to do more. She hurries out. She locks all the doors behind her because she doesn't want to get flooded.
No, right.
But she takes some of that water that she awoke this snake with, and she walks around the perimeter of this lake. It dries up all the water, dries up the springs. There's no water flowing into this lake now. It says that it even dries up the baby's tears.
Yeah, that was a shocking sentence to me. And not alone had the fountain of Mother Earth ceased to flow, for all the babies throughout the country were crying dreadfully, only without tears.
So the princess has disappeared. The lake is sinking. She is devastated, and kind of like her life is disappearing with this lake, and it is draining. And the prince finally notices it, and he's upset by the change in this lake, and he wants to know about his princess. So this is very cunning of him, it says. He gets a job at the castle to learn about her as a shoe black.
That's right. Because she doesn't use shoes. I mean, certainly doesn't wear them out. There's no weight to her.
Easiest job in the world.
Yeah, why don't more people ask for that? So he got it. I do love here at the beginning the reference to her being a nereid. So the nereids, of course, are the nymphs of water. And much like, I think we've talked about dryads in the past, how there's sort of this identification with the trees that the dryads are a part of, where they're, vaguely humanoid, but also a tree, and the two are tied together in life and death. Well, nereids, the idea is the same with the water. And so as this water is receding, as this lake is going away, her very life force seems to be going away too. And I thought that was a fun connection, or a cool reference.
What is a naiad then?
Nereids and naiads, the difference is whether it's saltwater or freshwater.
Why do you know that?
That one gets mentioned, I think, in the beginning to the Never-Ending Story book.
Ah, very good.
When Balsiar Bastian Bux is being quizzed on the difference. Somebody says, "You don't even know the difference between them," and he does. So.
I did not, so I'm with that guy. So this lake is draining, and the princess is struggling. She doesn't come in the lake anymore. It says she forgets about everyone because she doesn't care about anyone. She cares about this lake as much as she can care about anything. But It says these children, they can actually see the bottom of the lake now. And at the bottom, they find this golden plate. Turns out this plate is important.
Really quick, in addition to the plate, they're also like grabbing eels and fish, anything that might have fallen out of the boats of the king. So there are people that are making money off of this.
That's just smart.
Yeah, totally. But the plate is the important part. The little boy jumped in and dived for it. It was a plate of gold covered with writing. They carried it to the king. On one side of it stood these words: "Death alone from death can save. Love is death, and so is brave. Love can fill the deepest grave. Love loves on beneath the wave."
It's kind of mysterious.
Oh, totally. What on earth does that mean? If only there was a convenient retelling of it in prose.
Just look on the back.
Shock. Isn't that great, though, that even in this fairy world, somebody thought, yeah, they're not going to get this, so we better explain it on the backside?
I like that he puts it in to have the pretty poetry, but then you have the explanation for the kids and me. Thanks, George.
Well, here is the explanation. If the lake should disappear, they must find the hole through which the water ran, but it would be useless to try to stop it by any ordinary means. There is but one effectual mode. The body of a living man could alone stanch the flow. The man must give himself of his own will, and the lake must take his life as it is filled. Otherwise, the offering would be of no avail. If the nation could not provide one hero, it was time it should perish.
You know, I'm just realizing that's probably a biblical reference. The being able to find one righteous man, one hero in this land. And he's not even from there. But the title of the next chapter is Here I Am.
Yeah. You would think the hero should be the king, but, well, the king is very much not. The next chapter starts with the line, "This was a very disheartening revelation to the king. Not that he was unwilling to sacrifice a subject, but that he was hopeless of finding a man willing to sacrifice himself." And certainly the king is not willing to sacrifice himself.
Well, he's never claimed his daughter. She's not ours. She's somebody else. Her dad should do it.
That's right.
But the prince is gone for a few days, but when he comes back and learns of this, he has this inner dialogue. And I'm just going to read it. It says, "She will die if I don't do it, and life would be nothing to me without her. So I shall lose nothing by doing it, and life will be as pleasant to her as ever, for she will soon forget me. And there will be so much more beauty and happiness in the world." And he goes back and forth in his mind, but in the end he says, "All right, I am ready."
And then he goes to the king. And it's hilarious because the king is angry that the bootblack should dare to disturb him. And he draws his sword, but the prince is not flustered.
No, it's a great line. He says, "Please, your majesty, I'm your butler." And the king yells at him, "You liar!"
Yeah.
What do you mean? He says, "I will cork your big bottle." He is willing to go plug the hole in the lake with his body for the princess.
And even in his rage, the king realized he's probably not going to get another offer. And so, problem solved. He's excited. Hey, we got the guy. Yep, let's do it. But then the prince says, "Well, wait, I do have one condition."
How dare you?
Yeah, the king is not okay with him having conditions. But finally, the prince is able to actually give his condition. He says, "Only this," replied the prince, "that as I must on no account die before I am fairly drowned, and the waiting will be rather wearisome, the princess, your daughter, shall go with me. Feed me with her own hands, and look at me now and then to comfort me. For you must confess it is rather hard. As soon as the water is up to my eyes, she may go and be happy, and forget her poor shoeblack."
The king's like, "Okay, no big deal."
Why didn't you mention that to begin with?
Yeah, the prince, it says somewhere in here that he's very nonchalant about it, but right there at the idea of her forgetting her poor shoeblack, that's where his voice falters. But he is willing and he's going to go. So he's going to dress up. It says, "The prince went to dress for the occasion, for he was resolved to die like a prince."
That's right.
Good man.
There are some things that you just have to do it the right way.
Fashion.
And one thing I'm not sure that we've talked about yet is going back to the title of that last chapter, the Here I Am. George MacDonald just puts layers in everything, doesn't he?
I don't know of any story he wrote that doesn't have some reference to Christ.
Yeah, and this one, very, very strong reference. Obviously, I am the name of God to Moses in the Old Testament. And then in the New Testament, the 7 sayings of Christ in the book of John, the I am sayings. I am the way, the truth, and the light, etc., etc. Yeah, just such a striking similarity between a sacrifice, right? A willing, voluntary sacrifice for the life and happiness and joy of someone else.
Yeah, the king tells the prince, he's like, well, I'll just throw you in the hole. He's like, no, the victim must offer himself. This has to be a sacrificial death in this lake for this princess who he knows will forget him soon and very soon. But he's willing.
Yeah. And so he's dressed up, he's ready to go, and to the bottom of the lake and the hole he goes. And it's not a very big hole, but it's kind of awkwardly shaped. It says it's got 3 cornered. And so this requires him to use both his feet and his hands to cover the hole.
Yes, it's very awkward. I love this question, though. It says, okay, here's the hole, but how is he to be put in? It's the same thing she asked the prince.
Oh, that's good.
About how do you get in? He can't figure out how to get into the hole, and it's awkward. It's not instinctive for him. He's got both legs in, and yeah, he uses his hands, and he's uncomfortable, but they give the princess a boat. It's very thoughtful, actually. They expect the lake to refill, so then she'd need a boat, and they put food and wine in it. But she does not seem to care. The title of this chapter is, This is Very Kind of You.
Mm-hmm.
For someone sacrificing themselves for your happiness.
Yeah.
Seems like a little casual statement.
Good for you. Way to do this for me and everyone.
So kind.
Well, she even says that exactly. So later on, as she's not even staying awake. And again, biblical references, right? When Christ is in the Garden of Gethsemane, about to face his death, and he asks for his friends to wake and watch with me 1 hour, and they can't do it. She can't do it either. She's fallen asleep on him. She's not really doing her job. And she says, though, at one point, "This is very kind of you, Prince," said the princess at last, quite coolly, as she lay on the boat with her eyes shut. "I am sorry I can't return the compliment," thought the prince, "but you are worth dying for, after all."
Yeah, so that takes me to another George MacDonald quote from his Unspoken Sermons. There's multiple, but I believe this is from his first series, and I'd like to just read this one because George MacDonald doesn't use as complicated of language in his fairy tales. In his sermons, though, he puts these things that you really have to think about. To be honest, I reread this one several times, but here we go. Love has ever in view the absolute loveliness of that which it beholds. Where loveliness is incomplete, and love cannot love its fill of loving, it spends itself to make more lovely that it may love more and more. I think it has much to do with the idea of if you truly love someone, something, you see it for what it can become. And your loving it helps it to become that. Mm-hmm. It's this circular, positive buildup of something. So he's looking at this princess. She's not looking at him, but he sees who she could be, and he loves who she is right now. His loving of her is fulfilling that circle.
Yeah, I think that's great.
It's very George MacDonald.
Very George MacDonald, and also the concept that the act of love itself has power. That whether the recipient is worthy of it or whether the recipient knows it, even the actual act of love lends good to the recipient. And we start to see some changes in the princess here as the water is raising higher and higher. First off, she's excited because the boat starts to float. I got tripped up on this one because the line was, "But at that moment up started the princess crying." And I thought, she's crying. And then I realized, no, it means crying as in shouting.
Exclaiming.
Yeah, I'm afloat. And so the boat is starting to go up. And she starts to actually minister to him. He has to ask her to do it.
Yeah, first she says, "I think I'll go back to sleep." And he says, "Just give me a glass of wine and a biscuit first." Very communion.
Yeah.
Taking of the bread and wine. And here she says, "With all my heart." And it says she gaped as she said it. She was surprised that it came out that way. Mm-hmm. But then she does. She feeds him with her own hands. His hands are busy plugging this hole.
Yeah, leading to his death, his certain death. He does take his opportunity here to kiss the fingers as they come in, and it says she doesn't really seem to mind.
But she notices that he doesn't look well.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something outside of herself. So it is incremental in nature, but she starts to notice him. She does look at him, which is all he really wanted for her to be there to do anyway.
And then she invites him to go on a swim. Again, she's the light princess. She's frivolous. I shall never swim more, said the prince. Oh, I forgot, said the princess, and was silent. Remember earlier when this horrible beggar, this pitiful beggar came to her, and there's tragedy, and she just laughs? She's not laughing now. She's silent. And so again, this progression is occurring here during this encounter.
And at the end here, he's almost done. It describes how the moon is up, it's dark out, everyone else is left. The water's rising up to the level of his face, and he asks feebly, "Will you kiss me, princess?" And it says his nonchalance was all gone now. And she says, "Yes, I will." And she kissed him with a long, sweet, cold kiss. And the prince says, "Now," with a sigh of content, "I die happy."
Fairy tales do romance better than anyone. I mean, this is a short story. He dies happy for love. He has been kissed by the princess. That's just beautiful. I love that part. It then says he did not speak again.
The water is up. It touches his chin. It touches his lips. It covers his nose. It says he breathed through his nostrils, and the princess looked wild, and then it covered his nostrils. And she looks scared. And it says he doesn't breathe again. He is gone. The princess freaks out.
The princess gave a shriek and sprang into the lake. She jumps into the lake. She jumps down into the lake. She laid hold first of one leg and then of the other and pulled and tugged, but she could not move either. She stopped to take breath, and that made her think that he could not get any breath. She was frantic. She got hold of him and held his head above the water, which was possible now his hands were no longer on the hole, but it was of no use, for he was past breathing. Love and water brought back all her strength. She rips him out. It's so good.
She hauls him out. She hauls him onto the boat. She has no idea later how she even did it. She's never rowed before. This is all new to her. Jumping into the water is all new to her. Climbing out of the water would be new to her. But by this time, her people were on the shore. They had heard her scream. And
so good.
She has rudeness for the first and last time.
But the lake, your highness, said the chamberlain, who, roused by the noise, came in his nightcap. Go and drown yourself in it, she said.
This was the last rudeness of which the princess was ever guilty, and one must allow that she had good cause to feel provoked with the Lord Chamberlain. It's not important right now.
That's right.
Even if he'd been the king, he would have gotten the same insult. She cares for the prince. She takes him to her room, and they send for the doctors, but it says, don't worry, she has an old nurse who is a wise woman, and she knew what to do. Also very George MacDonald-y.
Very George MacDonald. It's of note that the king is asleep. He's not there. He doesn't care. At last, when they had all but given it up, just as the sun rose, the prince opened his eyes.
When the light comes up. It's excellent.
And then the final chapter, look at the rain.
The princess burst into a passion of tears and fell on the floor. There she lay for an hour, and her tears never ceased. All the pent-up crying of her life was spent now. And a rain came on, this land that had been dry. A rain came on, such as had never been seen in that country. The sun shone all the time, and the great drops, which fell straight to the earth, shone likewise. They're talking about torrents pouring from the mountains. The babies aren't even sad now to cry. They're just laughing anyway. They could cry if they wanted to now.
The tears would come. The tears are there. Yeah, it's restoration and beauty, and the water is there. And the princess now has gravity. She has cried. She has fallen in love. It goes on at some length about how challenging it is for her to learn to walk. I mean, imagine never having gravity, and then all of a sudden you've got it at 17.
She's like a baby. She has to relearn to walk, or learn for the first time for her. But her nurse says she's found her gravity, and the princess is like, oh, is that it? I consider it very unpleasant. I feel as if I should be crushed to pieces. They ask about the lake, and it's brim full. And the prince says, then we're all happy. And the princess, sobbing, says, that we are indeed.
I'd like to read the last 3 paragraphs because they make me happy. The lake never sank again. In process of time, it wore the roof of the cavern quite through and was twice as deep as before. The only revenge the princess took upon her aunt was to tread pretty hard on her gouty toe the next time she saw her. But she was sorry for it the very next day when she heard that the water had undermined her house and that it had fallen in the night, burying her in its ruins, whence no one ever ventured to dig up her body. There she lies to this day. So the prince and princess lived and were happy, and had crowns of gold, and clothes of cloth, and shoes of leather, and children of boys and girls, not one of whom was ever known on the most critical occasion to lose the smallest atom of his or her due proportion of gravity. I love that she steps on her toes with her gravity.
And her weight.
Yeah.
She has weight to step upon her toe.
That's her revenge.
So, there's this last footnote for you about gravity. Apparently, there's a publication of this where it pairs this story with The Giant's Heart and the Shadows.
Mm-hmm.
And there's almost this narrator effect where he's reading these stories and the listeners like interject comments and things. So at the end, when they're talking about the story, they ask, well, what is the moral of it? And one of them says that you need not be afraid of ill-natured ants, though they are witches. And somebody else says, no, my dear, that's not it. It is that you need not mind forgetting your poor relations. No harm will come of it in the end. And then the doctor who's listening says, I think the moral is that no girl is worth anything till she has cried a little.
The Light Princess. It's short. It's an easy read. If you're looking for a jump into George MacDonald, this is honestly a great place to start because it's fun, it's easy, but like everything he wrote, it has depth, it has warmth, it has love, it has just so much power to it once you get past just the fun story. But you don't even need to get past the fun story because the fun story is fun in its own right.
So that about wraps us up. But it is Bilbo's birthday. So we started with a poem. I think we should end with a poem by Bilbo Baggins.
Absolutely appropriate. I sit beside the fire and think of all that I have seen, of meadow flowers and butterflies, and summers that have been, of yellow leaves and gossamer, and autumns that were there, with morning mist and silver sun and wind upon my hair. I sit beside the fire and think of how the world will be, when winter comes without a spring that I shall ever see. For still there are so many things that I have never seen. In every wood and every spring there is a different green. I sit beside the fire and think of people long ago, and people who will see a world that I shall never know. But all the while I sit and think of times there were before. I listen for returning feet and voices at the door. And with that, we'll turn the page, and we hope you join us for the next chapter.